皆さんこんばんは、金雅子です。お時間となりましたので生配信をスタートさせていきたいと思います。今日は、生配信のタイトルに、あります通り、TSA ウォッチリストの女性インタビュー、米国グローバリズムレジスタンス運動と題してアン・バンダースティールさんのインタビューをお届けしたいと思います。ちょっと音の確認をします。今日は、生配信のはい、大丈夫ですね。はい、音声の、確認ができました。私は今、中米をあちこち回っているところなんですが、グアテマラに行った時に今日インタビューお届けする映像の撮影をしました。この方はアメリカ人の方なんですけれども、我々ジャーナリストのグループであちこち回っていて、でグアテマラでですね、この方もいらっしゃって、インタビューをしたという経緯になります。で私はグローバリズムというのに焦点を当てていろいろなリサーチをしているところなんですけれども、彼女はアメリカ人の立場で、発信もしていますし、いろんなレジスタンス運動も起こしている人物でありまして、非常に重要人物であります。はい、現在今私はですねパナマに来ております。はい、で今日はちょっとパナマの話はしないんですけれども、この今回のちょっとですね最近スペイン語をあちこち中米で行くので、スペイン語を一生懸命本当に少ない知識で話したりだとか、あるいは英語で話をすること、英語でインタビューをすること、英文を読むこと、今本も読んでいたりして、英語ばっかりスペイン語ばっかりっていうのがちょっとあってですね、日本語喋るのかインタビューも受けるインタビューも日本語のインタビューというよりは英語のインタビューをお願いされることが多いというか、あるので、日本語喋るのがですね本当に久しぶりというか、たどたどしい日本語になってしまっていますが、すいません。そういうわけで今日はこのインタビュー動画に字幕つけたのをお届けしたいと思いますが、その前にですね、説明欄にも書いてるんですけど、一般的に、オピニオンリーダー、言論人というのは2つの種類があります。でこの説明欄にも書いてますけど、一つは、一般の人たちに広く、情報を発信する、インフルエンサー的な呼び方をされると思いますが、そういう人たちで、もう一種類はそういったオピニオンリーダー的人たち、要するに人々に大きな影響を持っている人たちに影響を与える人たち、オピニオンリーダーに声を届ける人たち、オピニオンリーダーたちが耳を傾ける人というのが2種類目とすると、今日インタビューをお届けするアン・バンダースティールさんは2番目の方なんですよ。で、いろんなですね著名人の方々と米国内を回っていろんな運動をしています。で彼女は昔日本でも有名な、ジェームズ・オキーフさんがやっているプロジェクトベリタスでも調査員をやっていた方ですですからすごくプロフェッショナルでいろんな調査とかもするんですけれども、話もうまいですし、そして今行動にも移していろんな運動を起こしている方です。ナスさんが日本語上手ですよってありがとうございますはいで、というわけでですね、この方に私ずっと前からインタビューしたかったんですけど、なかなか忙しくて、こういう機会を持てなかったんですが、今回お願いをして、できました。でこの方ですね、タイトルに私が入れたのは TSA のウォッチリストに入っている人物というふうに書いたんですけれども、どういうことかと言いますと、ちょっと記事を紹介したいと思います。クワイエットスカイズと、訳せば静かな空というふうに呼ばれると思いますが、そういう監視制度がありまして、 TSA、アメリカの運輸保安局 よくスーツケース買うときにこのスーツケースについているロックは TSA に認証されてますよとかいう鍵を閉めててもそのまま入れて向こうの TSA が開けて使えるよっていうそういうので皆さん分かると聞いたことあると思いますが、その TSA が秘密裏に一般市民を対象に監視をしているということがありまして、で彼女はなんとそのウォッチリストに入っている人物なんですよ。つまりどういうことかというと、今の政府がやっているおかしなことですとか、あるいは動画などでもなかなか検閲されてしまうようなことなどをはっきりとアメリカ国民に危機的状況を知らせるために、アメリカ国民に目覚めてもらうために発信をする重要人物なので、そういうことで犯罪歴とかそんなのないにもかかわらず、ハラスメントを行われているような人物なんです。はい、でじゃあちょっとこの記事紹介します。これ BBC のこれは2018年の、記事なんですが、タイトルが米国内線で一般市民を監視不審行動報告もとあります。2018年7月31日の、記事です。米運輸保安局 TSA は飛行機の国内線で特定の一般市民を監視する制度を運用しているとの批判に直面している。クワイエットスカイズ、静かな空と呼ばれる監視制度は非公表のアルゴリズムを使って犯罪歴がないものの監視する必要があるとみなされる国内線の乗客を選び出しているという。報道によると現場で監視を行う航空保安官たちは監視制度に反対していた。 TSA は監視制度で人種的分析は全く行っていないとし、実用的な方法だと説明した。TSA は BBC の取材に文書で回答し、定期的な見直しに加えて法律やプライバシー、市民の権利と自由に関する当局の積極的な管理がされており、地上1万メートルで再びテロ行為が起きるのを防止する上で同制度は実用的な手法だ。2018年の7月に最初に報じられたんですけれども、連邦航空保安官らが旅行者を追跡し、不審行動があれば TSA に報告していると。で監視対象になった米国市民を含む旅行者はテロリストの監視の容疑がかけられていたりはしないという。でこれ2018年時点の数字ですけれども、静かな空のリストに名前が載っても本人は通知されないですから、本人は分からないんです。米メディアによると対象者は50人以下だという。この運用を2010年から始めているが、これまで公表してこなかったということで、これ要するに、いろんなテロとかを口実に一般市民を、しかも罪も犯していない人たちにもどんどん監視体制を敷くようなことがどんどん広げられていったわけです。9.11 もそうですけど、そういう意味で米国内ではこれが非常に問題視されています。罪も何も犯していないのになぜこうやって人権をプライバシーを侵害されてウォッチされなければいけないのかと。で今日インタビューしたこの女性というのはこれに入っていて、実際に空港に着くとですね、彼女はあちこち講演活動もして回ってますから、飛行機をしょっちゅう乗るんです、国内線を。そうするとまず最初にもうさまざまなチェックポイントでこの人だけ、普通の人はすんなり通っていくようなところでもこの人だけわざわざ止められて、また荷物開けて全部検査して、もう何回も同じ空港の中でずっとされてですねいるとかで、それのせいで飛行機に乗り遅れそうになったりとかいろいろあるんですよ。で私が見た去年の彼女の番組持ってるんですけど、自身の話では飛行機に乗っていざ出発しようとした時に彼女にこの保安官がやってきて、あなたはちょっと検査しないといけないから、乗れませんと、飛行機から降りてくださいと言って、一回搭乗したにもかかわらずわざわざもう民衆の前で一人だけですね、もう怪しい人のように扱われて飛行機から降ろされて、で飛行機は飛び立ってしまったと。こういうことで、これがあったから彼女は何かがおかしいと。それで、自分がこのリストに入っていたっていうのが、分かったわけなんですけれども、ちょっと記事を続けますと、 TSA の内部資料によると、 航空保安官たちは下記のような旅行者のさまざまな行動を監視している。過剰にそわそわしている、過剰に汗をかいている、冷たく刺すような視線で凝視、目を大きく見開き凝視する様子、顔を手で触る、フライト中にどの程度寝ていたか、スマートフォンの使用。TSA の報道官は、もし旅行者の行動に特に変わりがなく、飛行機が何事もなく到着した際には、対象者が当局から接触を受けたり逮捕されたりすることはないと、語ったと、いうことで、こういうすでにある、制度を使って、今のこのグローバリズムに対しておかしな声を上げている人たちが、ハラスメントを受けているわけであります。で、現在彼女自身は当局にいろんなこの内部文書を、フリーダム・オブ・インフォメーション・アクトでしたっけ、内部情報を公開する情報公開請求制度っていうのが向こうはもっと日本より発達してますから、それでですね、一体どうなっているのかを、突き止めようとしていますが、なんやかんや言って当局は情報を出そうとしていないと、今こういうような状況で、あります。はい。なんかさっきちょっと見れなかったのかな、配信は復旧していますと書いてますが、すいません、私が気づかなかったですね。今見れているようなので、よかったです。では続けたいと思います。そういうわけでですね、このアン・バンダースティールさんは、非常にいろんなことを詳しくてですね、今日お届けするインタビューの内容というのは、彼女自身がこの受けているハラスメントの内容というよりも、むしろ米国の愛国者が反グローバリズムとして立ち上がっている人たちがどういうふうな、歴史観を持っているのか、どういうふうな具体的な行動を持ってグローバリズムに対抗しようとしているのか、不正選挙の問題ですとか、いろんな、方法論がありますけれども、でもやっぱり一番大事なのは、我が国が一体どういう、国の成り立ちをしているのか、そのもともとの国の、国大というのは一体何なのか、それからかけ離れているから今の状況があるわけで、そこに立ち戻らなければいけないと、こういうことなんですよね。それがアメリカ国民の場合はどういうことなのかっていう根本的本質的なことを教えていただきましたので、そういう意味で非常に貴重な内容になっています。で、これをご覧になられて、これはアメリカ国民の話ですから、それを我々日本国民に置き換えた時に、じゃあ我々はどういったものの考え方をしなければいけないのか、何が問題なのか、グローバリズムと立ち上がるといっても、じゃあ私たちはグローバリズムから何を守るのか、それをきちんと分からなければいけないわけですよね。ということで、そういう意味でですね、深く日本人の心にも考えさせられる内容になっていると思います。はい、ということで前置きがちょっと長くなってしまいましたが、ではですね、今紹介させていただいたアン・バンダースティールさんのインタビューをご覧いただきたいと思います。それでは、どうぞ。
Hello everyone, this is Masako Ganaha. Today I'm going to interview my wonderful guest. Actually, I have been wanting to interview Anne for a long time, and finally I got to interview. So I'm very excited.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so
It's an
much
honor.
for this opportunity.
Absolutely. It's honor is mine.
Thank you.
Yes.
So she is the host of the show Right Now with Ann Vandersteel. And she has been traveling a lot and doing very critical broadcasting, and not only talking, but she is doing a lot of activism too, and giving speeches and encouraging many American people and people all over the world to for the world. So today I'm going to bring up two topics, and first topic is parallel world United States, and second topic is resistance movement in United States.
Yeah, those are important.
Yes.
Big topics.
Yes, and especially the second one, you are in the center of this movement. And I think by many viewers are Japanese people, and we want to know what we can do, not only learning, but we want to put in action.
Yeah.
Yes. So my first question is, so I heard you are no longer U.S. citizen. Could you please explain?
Sure. So, Masako, you know, the history of the United States is not what people believe it to be. There's a general idea that we had a Revolutionary War and that we won our freedom and that we have a constitution that protects the people from a tyrannical government. But what the people are waking up today, and not only in our country, but it's around the world, is that tyranny is everywhere in government and that the people are debt slaves to the government. And while our country was founded to be free from tyranny, to have religious freedom and the right to be a property owner without encumbrances of government, we have strayed very far from that. When the Founding Fathers came over here 250 years ago, they told King George III, we no longer want to be living in a feudalistic society where we have to pay you to live on the land that you own it all. It's not fair. God gave us the right to be free. He gave us dominion over the earth. And when God gave man dominion over the earth, it was every man, not just the American man or woman. So that meant you had dominion over the land and all things that walked and crawled on the land, dominion of the air, everything that flies in the air, and the water, everything that swims in the sea, the LAW. That is the original law book, is the Bible. So our entire, our foundation of our country is of Christian roots. The Creator's name is invoked 4 times in our Founding Fathers' documents. And it's because our Founding Fathers were so rooted in their beliefs that the Creator gave us the divine providence over the land, the air, and the water, that, you know, they set out to create God's second covenant nation in America. And up until the time from the Revolutionary War through after the War of 1812, where the British came back and burned a lot of things down, including the White House and a lot of important buildings, because they hoped to destroy our documents that proved that we are intended to be free. Our Constitution gives us those freedom and protects us from tyranny. But we went through the Civil War period. And then at the end of the Civil War, after the country had lost many, many good men and women, they wanted to come back together, and they were looking for common ground. And as Americans, each of the free people were living in different states. You either lived in New York, New Jersey, Vermont, Virginia, New Hampshire, Florida, what have you. And they were all citizens of those states. And up until 1868, they were electing their public servants to go and serve and represent the people from their states. What happened is members of the Union that were under the influence of the British Commonwealth, again, the Crown, came back around and decided to get another bite at the apple, meaning they were trying to figure out how to get their fingers and their claws back into America, how they could control America. And so they convinced the Union to bring everybody together under the umbrella of the United States. We were not the United States up until 1868. It took about 2 years. They started this process in 1866, and when it was first introduced to the states, about 41% of the states said, no, we don't want to be under that umbrella. We want to remain individual states. We were individual free nation states that had a union, a common ground, and we formed a federal government for our common defense, military, and of course our postal office and postal roads, just, you know, common services that would service the states, but they wanted to maintain their independence. After 2 years of battling, finally under duress, the final 2 states that held out, New Jersey and Ohio, said, okay, we'll sign. We'll become part of the United States. They didn't want to do it. It was under duress, meaning it's fraudulent when you do something and you're made to sign something that you don't want to. That's a fraudulent engagement in a contract. So we no longer were Americans and living as free people in our states. We became United States citizens. And a citizen, by definition, is a municipal servant. 2 years later, in 1871, the United States was incorporated, as well as the Bar Association was formed, the British Accredited Registry, and that is where all barristers, lawyers, attorneys are registered. And they also have an oath to the Crown as part of the British Accredited Registry. So you see, when you have corporations and attorneys, you have problems. And the United States, as we now know, has become under the influence of the public-private partnership, which is what we learned during COVID, right? These big corporations, these globalist corporations, partnered with for-profit agency corporations inside our own government, corporations like the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, these globalist organizations all are for-profit. They have a for-profit balance sheet, but they're not sanctioned or chartered by our Constitution. They have nothing to do with the original law of the land, the structure of our founding government, our executive, legislative, and judicial branch. There's no such thing as agency branch or a media branch. But today we have agency and media controlling the narrative and controlling the mandates, which are not laws. So we have slipped into this public-private partnership of hell, I call it, and we've lost our rights to be free because as citizens, you are subject to the corporate mandates. If you work for a big corporation and on Tuesday they say you have to wear a yellow tie to work, you'll show up to work with a yellow tie because they might fire you. And so that's what happened during COVID. People took poison death shots and jabs because they were going to lose their jobs. They were threatened. So I decided after the 2020 election was clearly stolen that I no longer wanted to be a party to a corporation that was engaging in endless wars against my will. Nobody asked me if I wanted to finance wars around the world, let alone the federal government just going in and arbitrarily giving billions and billions of dollars to countries without taking care of the people here in our country, like our veterans. So we have a lot of problems here at home. The corporate United States government spends a lot of time and money outside of the boundaries of the United States, and the people suffer. So that's why I decided to become an American state national, where I just removed the status as a U.S. citizen, and I remain an American. What does that mean? It means I was able to go out and get my passport renewed, but corrected with the status correction made on the passport. So the United States government recognizes either U.S. citizens or nationals. And if anybody has a passport and they open up the first page, they will read in a paragraph where that is specifically spelled out. So my passport, when scanned in customs, and I've traveled abroad out of the country, you and I are in Guatemala right now. When I go back to the States later this week, I'll go through the resident alien line. I'm not a U.S. citizen. They'll scan me and I'll walk right on in like I've done the last couple of times. So you don't have to be a U.S. citizen in order to live in America, and clearly that has been made very obvious with what's happening at the southern border right now. We are being flooded with illegal aliens that don't contribute anything to this country, to our country, but instead they're a drain. They provide disease, crime, and they're also taking $2,200 a month. Again, as a U.S. tax-paying citizen, I can't imagine any one of my friends sanctioning that or agreeing to it or voting for it without at least being asked. So this is why, as part of the restoration of the Republic, it's critical that people know their constitutional rights, they stand on them, and they decide that they're going to sever, alter, and abolish the government that has usurped the freedoms that we were guaranteed under our Founding Fathers' Constitution. So this is what it means to be an American state national. I'm standing on principle that I know I'm supposed to be free. So, a lot of people in the country have taken the same position in Masako, and they are severing the relationship as a status symbol of being a U.S. citizen, because another thing we're learning is that the symbol or the status of a U.S. citizen offers privileges that the government right now simply can't even afford to fund. Social Security is bankrupt, welfare, and on and on. We have program after program that's being bankrupted, and they're printing more and more money that the U.S. citizen taxpayer must pay the interest on in order to keep funding these programs, and they're funding these programs by going massively into debt. Again, something I don't agree with. So as an American, I decided to stand on my own, stand on the law of the land. I'm clearly a free woman, and I'm watching a lot of other people engage in the same process, declare their freedom again.
Wow. So this is a very new thing. I think nobody reported about this or heard about this, about your status. I would like to ask you questions so that I can make sure that I understand correctly. Sure. So historically, American people came to America to get freedom, and they fought But then in the course of the history, well, to begin with, each state was like an independent
Right.
country, right? And they had freedom. But later, by British-led to implement this citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
So then, basically those fundamental rights each state has was overtaken.
So the way you have to look at it is what we understand today is the international banking cabal's headquarters. There's the Bank of International Settlements, and then of course there's the City of London. So the bankers really started all this with the Rothschilds banking in the City of London. And the way they could get back control of the revenue that was coming out of America was to incorporate the United States and make everybody a U.S. citizen, and therefore layer on other taxation. So again, after we became incorporated, of course, then we had the income tax. We had the Federal Reserve Act was passed in 1913, and then the 16th Amendment in 1916 was passed, and also we had the Birth Certificate Amendment, which made everybody have to register as a resident, or as a certificate of their birth certificate made them corporate chattel, because it created a corporate fiction of that individual. So when I was born, my parents registered that I was born at the hospital. They signed paperwork, and then the hospital gave them a birth certificate from the state of New Jersey and had them fill it out, which basically acknowledged my all capital name, which is a corporate nomenclature for any corporation. If you were to look at businesses today and you were to go to the Secretary of State's for where these businesses are actually incorporated, every single corporation is always published in an all capital letter name. When you get your driver's license, your birth certificate, your social security card, your passport, the government recognizes the corporate fiction of you in your all capital name. And so a birth certificate represents the corporate fiction that the government created of you. It's a straw man of you. And that allows them to contract with you on the IRS for the 16th Amendment, to contract with you with the Department of Motor Vehicles for a driver's license. And if you understand the law, and the Supreme Court has 200 cases that document this, you don't need a driver's license if you are traveling in your personal capacity in your private automobile. So this is a well-known fact. In fact, we were speaking, you and I, with somebody at the airport yesterday in Belize who had done some government work for Senator Roy Blunt in D.C. And the staff at Roy Blunt's office had asked this Belizean to rent a car. And he said, I can't, I don't have a driver's license. The United States Senate office staffer said, you don't need one if you have a passport. I've rented cars in America with my passport instead of using a driver's license. So it is factual. You don't need to be chattel to the government, meaning property of the government that they can monetize. And that's in fact what they've done by creating this corporate fiction of yourself, by making you a United States citizen so they can contract with you. I have separated myself from all of that, and I stand outside the corporate jurisdiction of the United States government, which operates as a commercial entity in the law of commerce, which is admiralty law, the law of the water, and I'm standing on the law of the land, which is governed and protected by our Constitution. So it's common law versus admiralty law, and the government operates in admiralty law, and I operate in common law, the law of the land, as a free people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, I wonder how many or what percentage of American people actually noticed about this and actually changed their status. Do you know? It's starting or it's...
It's taking off. I know that much. The last number I heard was there was about 30 to 35 million Americans that had corrected or are in the process of correcting their status.
That's quite a lot.
It's a lot of Americans, yeah. And it's not an uncommon topic of discussion in the States now. When people ask me about it or they hear about it, most people that I run into now have heard of this process. They may not know anything about it or they may not know how to do it, but they are aware there is something out there, and they're becoming more aware that the United States government is incorporated and that clearly they don't work for the people. Another area that was really tragically overlooked was the 13th Amendment, which was originally drafted and in the process of ratification in 1819, and it was all about titles of nobility, meaning nobody with a title of nobility, in other words, a title like an esquire, either a banker or a lawyer, could serve, or a knight or a queen or anybody from the from the British common or the British aristocracy could serve in our government. You must be a commoner, an American. And so titles of nobility include bankers and lawyers. They changed the 13th Amendment as well as in 1868, as well as the ratification of the 14th, to take that piece out, but actually replace it with, that you will not have any sort of involuntary servitude, i.e. no slavery. The funny thing is they left the door wide open with the language to have voluntary servitude be okay, be lawful, meaning you can voluntarily be a slave. And today, U.S. citizens are debt slaves to the federal government. So there's a lot of tricky language that the government and the lawyers that are very, crafty at drafting, they're very devious because they know how to wordsmith the English language to make you read it and believe and see it the way you want to, but in fact it means something completely different. So it has been a long educational process, but Americans are waking up to it. And I think they're waking up to it more rapidly because they realize something is gravely wrong with the country.
That's how serious American people are thinking about what's happening in America, and that's how they are trying to resist against about this corporate entity.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, it's very interesting. And so is this the way how American people can fight back against this tyranny that's happening? For example, there is this one world government movement using, for example, WHO to amend those international unlawful regulations, and they're trying to mandate everything. And when pandemic, for example, happens, and there are international concerns, and each country has a different history and different legislative system. So how American people can fight back against this matter is different from how Japanese people can fight back. And so I'm trying to figure out how each people in each country are fighting back. So American people can fight in the way they change their status and go back to original freedom state.
That is one way, absolutely. There's other ways that we can fight back. In fact, in Florida, I've been privileged to know a lot of incredible patriots that decided to take matters into their own hands and use the law to protect themselves from the encroachment of the federal government and any other non-governmental agency or body of agencies that are outside our own country, like the WHO. So, for instance, Collier County, Florida, is the county in Southwest Florida where Naples, Florida resides. And the folks down there, Scott and Jill Kiley, last year got together and organized a group of other patriots and said, we are in the middle of COVID. We can never allow anybody to lock us down, mask us up, or force vaccinate us ever again. So they approached their county commissioners, which is really the appropriate way to do this. It's called local action. When you get local, in America, we have 3,143 counties. So if everybody across the United States of America worked locally in their counties, we could provide a common defense from a tyrannical government or a foreign body like the WHO. And what they did in Collier, which is now spreading throughout Florida and elsewhere in the country, was they educated their county commissioners and showed them the dangers of masking. They showed them the dangers of remdesivir. They showed them the COVID statistics, how people really weren't dying from COVID, but they were dying from the treatments that the government was mandating. And they also stood up and educated the commissioners on the vaccines and how dangerous the vaccines are. So after several meetings with county commissioners, they brought in experts in health. I came and spoke. Other people like Josh Schroeder from Freedom Flyers, who has a lot of data on the pilots and the mandates and what it did to the pilots when they took the shots, educated the county commission. And the county commission voted unanimously to pass an ordinance first a resolution and then an ordinance, and then they codified all of this by making the entire county of Collier a Bill of Rights sanctuary county, which basically underscored what we already have with our Constitution, which is our Bill of Rights, our 10 amendments that protect us, right? But Collier County said we need to make sure that that's front and center so that the next time the federal government decides to come into our county and say, you need to put a mask on, you need to go lock yourself in your room, and you're going to have to get a shot, the county has the defensive mechanism to say, no, we won't do it. You don't have jurisdiction here. And they've also pushed the WHO out. So the WHO has no jurisdiction, has no legal authority at all. The WHO has been banished from Collier County. And this is what is happening, and it's multiplying like wildfire around the country. There's other organizations, Misako, like tacticalcivics.com, which are in about 2,000 counties right now. And they're teaching the folks how to actually stand up citizen grand juries so that we can now prosecute anybody in the public service arena who has either committed election fraud, COVID fraud, or any other crimes. But this is how our government works. If you read our Constitution, the first 3 words are, we the people. Not we the government, not we the New World Order, not we the crown, it's we the people. And so the people are the government in the United States, in America. We are the government, down at the local level to the federal level. And what we have right now is we have an overgrown government of agency bureaucrats that we didn't elect that are telling us what we have to do. And they're exercising that control using jurisdiction because you're a U.S. citizen. You have to fall under their jurisdiction. Since I'm not a U.S. citizen, I don't fall under their jurisdiction anymore. So I have released myself. I'm free from federal mandates, but we need to layer all of these strategies on to really restore the Republic and get ourselves free again. Because again, the Republic was made up of Americans, not U.S. citizens, when it first launched.
Wow. I was going to separate this, but I'm going to just continue asking you a question, if it's okay. So it's very interesting how resistance is growing and effectively, and WHO cannot even step into your county. That's great. In Japan, I think it started in UK. There is an organization called, it's a counterpart to WHO, and it's called World Council for Health, WCH, and Japanese branch has opened this year. Yes, and this week, I think in a couple of days, only 3 congressmen got together, and they're going to start their congressman group to advocate this movement. And so I'm trying to figure out how we can, as Japanese, make progress in this movement. But it's so there is already a sanctuary place in the United States to already made progress and already succeeded in this fight.
Yeah.
Wow, it's very important for many Japanese people to know, I think. So I want to ask you more about resistance movement in the United States. You mentioned about movement starting in Chicago about preventing crimes. Could you please explain us how local people are standing up?
That's a great question, and this is something I'm really excited about. President Trump's First Step Act released a lot of first-time offenders that had served far beyond what their sentence should have been. So they were released from prison. In Chicago, there's 1.5 million former prisoners who are now very active in their community, standing up and providing defense and patrol. They're doing citizens on patrol work to make, not necessarily citizen arrests, but disarm criminals. Chicago has a horrific murder rate. Over every weekend, 10, 20, sometimes more people are shot and killed. in Chicago. And it goes unreported in the news most of the time now, Masako, because it's just such a common occurrence. It's horrific. Between that and what we see happening at the southern border with the thousands and thousands of illegal aliens coming across the border and being bussed around the country, Chicago is getting between 50 and 60 busloads of illegals per day, which is also adding to the crime and the criminal element. Because what you and I have both seen down in the Darien Gap is these aren't people that are coming to America for a better way of life. These are people who have an agenda, and it's not one that's going to be good for this country. So the former felons, if you will, are now well organized. There's a gentleman by the name of Tyrone Mohammed, and he's really quite an activist. And he's got the ear of these people. He's sort of the unofficial leader. And they are taking, they take turns doing patrols on streets, on buses, and on subways, looking for criminal behavior so that they can be there when the police simply are not. So that's one form of citizen activism to keep America safe. But the type of activism that I'm engaged in is how do we restore the republic? How do we get people to understand what it truly means to be free and what we have given up? Because right now, as a U.S. citizen, you've exchanged your God-given freedom, your right to be free, as protected by our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, and exchanged it for the privileges that are issued to you as a U.S. citizen. But these privileges come at a cost, Masako. It doesn't cost you anything to speak your mind or worship your religion. That's freedom. But as a U.S. citizen, you've now exchanged those rights, your freedom of speech, for the privilege of being a U.S. citizen so that you can get student loans, welfare, Social Security. Those are all privileges that have to be funded. They come with a liability. And so those aren't free. Somebody's paying for it, and it's the taxpayer. So part of organizing a resistance and a restoration of our republic is explaining just how far off the mark America is from what we were supposed to be, what we started off as, to what we are today, the harm that it's bringing Americans and U.S. citizens to stay under this crown of thorns, I call it, as the U.S. citizen, but how they can use the common law as our founding fathers intended to remove, alter, and abolish the criminal element that's currently in our government from all branches, from the federal down to the local level. Citizen grand juries are critical to standing up and indicting the local and state and federal criminal politicians who are no longer working for the people, but lining their pockets with their globalist public-private partnerships. So citizen grand juries are critical for that, because once you indict somebody, you have a presentment that you would give to your sheriff in the county, and the sheriff would make the arrest. What we're finding out, Masako, is that there are sheriffs in counties around the country that are more concerned with the paycheck from the county than they are as the elected sheriff for the people to do the will of the people. So this is why part of the activism with Tactical Civics is to also build a standing militia. And every state constitution, because we have a U.S. Constitution and then we have state constitutions, every single state constitution and the U.S. Constitution talks about the militia, which is a well-regulated Second Amendment right. And that's for defense as well as enforcement of the law. So when the grand jury finds somebody guilty with a presentment, right, an indictment, if the sheriff won't make the arrest, then the militia will. And from there, you take it to the next phase, which is the judicial phase, and you stand up what's known as your Article 3 court, which is a court of common law with a jury of the guilties or the accused's peers. Meaning, if you're found guilty through an indictment, we would stand up a court and get jury of people that are from where you live to then listen to the evidence and decide if you're guilty. That's how the law in America is supposed to work. We don't have that working at all right now. It's quite the opposite. So this is what it means to be in the resistance. It's more about the restoration of the republic. Is it a second American Revolution? You could call it that. But clearly our founding fathers thought through this, because in the Declaration of Independence, which is arguably even more important than our Constitution on some fundamental level, it specifically talks about when the government becomes tyrannical and usurps our freedom, we have the right to alter and abolish. And so this is where we are as a country right now. We're at the life expectancy end of a republic. They usually last between 200 and 250 years. We're there, and we're watching communism, Marxism, socialism, and fascism descend upon America and destroy the fabric from which she was born. And we have to work very, very diligently to honor our founding fathers and use the documents, the parchment paper that gives us the instructions on what to do and save our country.
Oh, wow, it's very, what should I say? It's very fascinating. Now I think I learned what resistance means, or what is protecting my country means. It's not just about discovering what's happening, or talking about who is doing what, but also rebuilding our society.
Yes.
That's what you expressed by the word restoring. It's very important, because I don't think in Japan our concern has not gone that far. Like, we are just trying to wake up what's really happening, and the next step is, in order to fight back, we have to see how Japan is supposed to work, or how Japanese people, like how our ancestors, Japanese ancestors, have maintained our society. And so it's very eye-opening interview that I did today. Yes, thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. We have different cultures, but one of the things, Misako, that I think people need to understand is God made a beautiful world. It's a beautiful tapestry. He made men, women, different races, different, obviously, sexes, different countries, and he put us all over the place with different cultures. He doesn't want it destroyed. And what we see today is the World Economic Forum, the WHO, the UN, they're like an asteroid, all heading towards planet Earth. And they're here to destroy the culture, the fabric, the tapestry of what God created, because they want to melt us all into one homogeneous being, and they want a lot less of us.
Yes.
So, and they've showed that. They've demonstrated that with COVID. They've demonstrated that with the continual world wars, this war that's growing and growing at the moment. They're going to drag Japan in as well. They want to drag everybody in because they want less of you and me. We don't fit their narrative. We don't fit their future plans. And that's anti-God. And so I think that's where, Japanese, Americans, Brazilians, Russians, everybody can come together under that, and understanding that there's an evil force out there that wants to reduce who we all are. They don't appreciate the differences. And I do, you do. That's what makes the world so special, is being able to visit cultures like yours and come to America and visit ours and go around the world. Otherwise it'd be boring, right? If we were all the same.
Yes. It's very, thank you so much for your inspirational talk, and you are doing very critical broadcasting reporting, and you are always in the front, and to me you look like a women general. So when I see you, I feel like, I have to straighten my back, and then like I'm going to do my best.
No, we have to salute Big Honey.
Oh yeah. Yes.
He's the general.
Yes, but I really admire your work, and I hope to continue learning from what you are doing. And I hope many Japanese people will wake up how important it is to put in action and do what we truly believe. So there are many people who are watching this interview, and then many people got inspired. There are so many things that we can do, and also it's very important to listen to how American patriots like Ann is doing. So I hope many people will spread this interview, and then hopefully I will have future opportunities to talk with you more.
Always. I think the world of you, Misako. I'm humbled that you even wanted to talk to me. Thank you. The great Misako.
Thank you so much. This is Japanese way of doing. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time.
Thank you.
Because spending maybe a week with her, and she is like just professional. I'm learning how to do my work professionally. So it's inspiring in so many ways. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
どうもありがとう。
どうもありがとうございます。
はい、今ご覧いただいたのが、アン・バンダースティールさんの、インタビューになりますが、すごくなんて言うんでしょう、哲学的といいますか、すごく深い話で、ありました。皆さんいかがでしたでしょうか。彼女は自身、アメリカ合衆国の市民シティズンではなくて、そのステータスを法的に変更して、そしてアメリカ合衆国市民からアメリカ国民、ステイトナショナルっていうのが国民という意味になるんですがに、変わりました。それによって歴史的にアメリカという国が、法人のルールにのっとって運営されるような形で乗っ取られてしまったんですけれども、それを個人の立場においてはそれをひっくり返す、あるいは元に戻すということをしていると。で、そのような本来アメリカが建国された各州が独立して、そして公的な利益のために国防などにおいては共通の組織を持とうと、そういうふうな住み分け、とりわけ自由をいろんな形制度でもって担保するセーフガードをいっぱい法律の中に組み込んでいるという、アメリカ、そしてそのアメリカに住む市民ではなく国民に戻ったということでですね、そういうお話をご自身の体験から、あるいは法的な歴史的な説明などもしていただきました。翻ってみまして、我が国というのは、じゃあ私たち日本人の立場でグローバリズムに立ち向かう、そして我が国を守るという意味ではどういうことをしなければいけないのか、私たちもですね、もういい加減これが何か言うと陰謀論だとかなんとかでこの話がうやむやにされるんではなくて、行動に移して国を守るために、そしてもうこれはサバイバルのレベルなんですよね。サバイバル、生き残りをかけて、今日ちらっと何かの記事で見ましたけど、日本国内ではカタカナ4文字のお注射という名前はですね、これ勘違いするので、これはもう薬物毒物というふうに正しく呼ばなければいけないと思いますが、打っていない人が日本国内で1800万人しかいないんですよ。1億2000万の国民でですよ。その数字と先ほどのアンさんがおっしゃっていた、このステータスを市民から国民に変えたという人数が3000万から3500万が大体、考えられる数字だというふうに言ってましたけれども、この数字を見てもですね、そこまでするっていうことはもう相当目覚めていて、ステータスも変えるわけですから、相当いろんな、覚悟を決めてそういう行動に起こしているわけですから、それだけコアな人たちが、そんだけいるということなんですよね。日本とアメリカの、総国民数の母体は違いますけれども、こういった数字を見ても、なんて言うんでしょう、非常に危機的に国難を考えている人が、やっぱり人数で言えば日本は相当少ないと、言わざるを得ないですし、いろんな意味でですね、今回のアンさんのお話というのはためになるものだったと思います。アメリカの話でありますけれども、アメリカ人の戦いを見て、じゃあ我々日本人は日本人としてどう戦えるのか、それを、考えさせられる、内容だと思いますので、非常に重要なものだったと思います。2024年、 来年はまた大統領選挙の年になりますけれども、でももう、コロラド州でしたでしょうか、最近のニュースでは、州の最高裁が、トランプ大統領をこの、立候補する資格がないと言ったに等しいですよね。要するに投票用紙に丸をつけるわけですよ、マークを。いろんな候補者の名前があって、その名前のリストにトランプ大統領の名前を入れる資格がないというふうに、トランプ大統領は自分の名前をこれに入れてもらえる資格がないというふうに判決を出すとかですね、次の上のまた裁判、連邦裁に行くのかな、次のステップがあるんですけれども、こういう具合にも選挙の前哨戦がバチバチともう行われていて、前回不正選挙をしてあのような結果に出したわけですから、今回やらないわけがないでしょうということで、あります。そういった、選挙のいろんな事象を見るのもいいですけど、もっと大きな目でアメリカ国民が何を守ろうとしているのか、アメリカという国は本来どういう国であるのか、何が壊されようとしているのか、何が乗っ取られているのか、そういった根本的なところを深く理解すると、そういったいろんなですね、点と点が線でつながって理解することができると思いますし、そういった視点が非常に重要だと思います。アンさんはご自身でですね、いろんな番組に出ていますし、この説明欄にですね、アンさんの番組のリンクを載せておりますので、ぜひそちらから見てみてください。英語ですけれども、いろんな方インタビューしておりますし、ミリ社の話もしてましたよね。ミリ社は何ていうかな、民兵っていうんでしょうかね、自分自身で自分たちの身を守るために、軍を組織することができるという権利があると。それを実際行ってるわけですよ。給料だけに目がくらんで利権で正しいことをしないシェリフ、保安官からこれがやらないんであれば、代わりにミリシャが力でもって法律をなんて言うんでしょう、法律をなんて言うんでしょう、エンフォースって日本語が忘れてしまったな法律にのっとってその行動を起こすのが一般国民から出来上がったミリシャがやるんだと。もうそこまでですね、話し合われてるだけじゃなくて、具体的にもうその準備もしているということなんですよ。そこまでの深刻さがアメリカ国内では起きているということです。今日はもうまた話がどんどんあちこち広がってはいけないので、このインタビューのお話はこれまでにしたいと思いますが、いろんなこういった根本的なことを理解していくと、点と点になっている事象っていうのが深く理解できるようになります。で、その意味でも不法移民問題というのもですね、正しい用語ではなくなっていて、これはもう人口侵略と呼ぶべきものになりますが、それがですね、この本を書かれた著者の方にインタビューをしました。この本のタイトルは「The Weaponization of Loneliness」というタイトルで、日本語訳が出ていないので、私が簡単にもし訳すと、タイトルは「孤独の武器化」ですから、人の心に宿っている孤独感を利用した、心理戦という名付けるべきでしょうか。要するに、このステラ・モラビトさんという方がアナリストの方なんですけれども、おっしゃっているのは、歴史を通してですね、どの恐怖政治を行ったり社会主義共産主義をやってきた独裁者たちを見ても、彼らが取っている手口というのはエッセンスは全部一緒なんだということなんですよ。で、その歴史を振り返ることによって、今私たちが住んでいる社会がよく理解できます。どうしてアンティファがあんなことをするのか、どうして BLM が街を破壊しまくるのか、どうして、YouTube が、言論検閲をしきりにするのか、こういったことがですね、こういった歴史を学ぶことによって、またこの本を読むことによって全部理解できます。そしてこんなことが起きる、ありえないじゃなくて、起こって当然なんですよ。同じような、 グローバル全体主義を起こされようとしているわけですから、それをするためにはグレートリセットが必要なんですよ。このグレートリセットというのも、もうこの本を読むとですね、具体的に目で自分の社会を住んでいるところを見て、あれがこれか、これがこれかって住んでる社会がですね全部分かるようになります。そういう意味で素晴らしい本なんですけれども、その著者の方に、インタビューしました。ジェイソン・モーガン先生と一緒にインタビューしたんですけれども、なんと1時間40分もある長い、インタビュー動画でありまして、最近ずっと私はですねインタビューの下役というのをボランティアの方であったりとかプロの翻訳の方にお願いをして、私が最終的なチェックだけをするというプロセスでやってるんですけども、1時間40分はですねかなり長いインタビューになっていますが、でもカットはほとんどせずに全部お見せしたいと思います。それほど非常に大事だからです。これ理解するだけじゃなくて、自分自身を守るために、自分自身の心を守るために、自分自身の自由な考えを守るために、自分の言いたいことを言えるっていうこの当たり前の空間を守るために本当大事なんですよ。ということでそれを、紹介したいと思います。もっともっとこれも紹介したいんですけれども、今こちら夜中の3時でして、また明日もですねいろいろ、またありますので、これで、締めたいと思います。はい、ということでですね、今日は12月22日ですけれども、年内に帰国をしようと思っておりますから、もうすぐですね帰国します。で、年内の配信はこれでは終わりではなくて、また配信をしたいなと年内に思っていますので、まだ皆さん良いお年をお迎えくださいとは言わないでおこうと思います。はい、ということでですね、急な配信にもかかわらず本日もご覧いただきまして、ありがとうございました。コメントはちょっと全部はチェックできなかったんですけれども、でもたくさんの方がコメント残していますね。質問とかではないので、大丈夫だと思います。はい、はい、ということで、それでは最後に、この LGBT の対談本の宣伝のあれをお見せして締めくくりたいと思います。はい、ということで本日も最後までご視聴いただきましてありがとうございました。また次の配信でお会いしましょう。